Welcome back to our video series about In the Heights. Now, the story of In the Heights is about a few days of a summer in the lives of a community in Washington Heights, centering on a neighborhood blackout. And that's not a spoiler, there's literally a countdown to the blackout, letting us know it's coming. But the reason we know it's coming is that surrounding this core story is a framing device where future Usnavi is telling a group of kids on a beach about the events of summer past. It's sort of like how The Princess Bride is a fantasy story within a framing device of Peter Falk reading Fred Savage that story, or how Forrest Gump narrates most of the events of the movie from a bench talking to random strangers, or how an elderly Rose is narrating her story about surviving the Titanic. Okay, you get it. Pretty standard stuff, right? Well, what if I were to tell you that In the Heights has not one, but two framing devices? The first one being future Usnavi telling kids on a beach the core story, but also a second hidden one that secretly surrounds Usnavi's story on the beach and dramatically changes the meaning of that core story. Perhaps even more surprising, what if I told you that that second frame was defined by not one of the main characters, but by a seemingly minor character pulling the strings? Graffiti Pete. Okay, let me explain. This is how Graffiti Pete changes the ending. And spoilers.
Yeah, I'm a street light chilling in the heat. I illuminate the stories of the people in the street.
This line in the finale of In the Heights is more profound than it appears. For one thing, the idea of being a street light is a metaphor that ties in nicely with the blackout itself, which effectively turns off all the street lights. For another thing, this is a callback to the opening number where Usnavi called himself a street light.
And you're stuck to this corner like a street light. Yeah, I'm a street light choking on the heat. The world spins around while I'm frozen to my seat.
But there it was a negative metaphor, symbolizing the fact that, like a streetlight, he's stuck to his particular corner, forever experiencing regret that he's not able to move back to the Dominican Republic. In this scene where he first mentions the streetlight metaphor, Usnavi looks out of his window at a life that is passing him by. In the Heights book, Lin-Manuel Miranda calls this Usnavi's central metaphor and says it'll take the whole show for that metaphor to blossom. For more on that metaphor, check out Medium D Speaks breakdown about how light metaphors run throughout In the Heights. However, to get back to what Lin was saying, the blossoming of the streetlight metaphor comes in the finale when Usnavi has reclaimed being a streetlight by shifting the metaphor.
Yeah, I'm a street light chilling in the heat. I illuminate the stories of the people in the street.
Sure, he's stuck on his corner, but he's also someone who can illuminate stories of people who are not seen in our culture before, and he can shed light on them, making them visible. Visibility is one of the key themes of the film, and earlier in the film, Abuela Claudia actually articulates this.
We had to assert our dignity in small ways. That's why these napkins are beautiful. Little details that tell the world we are not invisible.
So the film is painting Usnavi's role as a storyteller who can shed light on those details and make his community feel seen, bringing stories to life of a Washington Heights block that was, in his words,
a block that was disappearing.
Now, one way to prevent this disappearance is to speak its name almost as a mantra.
Say it, so it doesn't disappear.
Washington Heights!
Say it, so it doesn't disappear.
Washington Heights!
The use of mantras as mnemonic or memory devices
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming, swimming.
is seen again and again. We see it in Usnavi's mantra as he wakes up each morning.
Best days of my life. Best days of my life.
Best days of my life.
We see it in the list of Latina icons that Usnavi teaches to the kids.
Chita, Rita, Frida, Celia, Dolores, Isabel, Sandra, Julia, Roberta, Mirabal.
And the mantra tends to be accompanied by a visual mnemonic device as well, an image that reminds us of the mantra. In the case of Best Days of My Life, it's the pictures of Usnavi's father that he wakes up to, as well as the pictures of the beach and the mural on the wall in his store, which all help preserve the memory of the Dominican Republic as Usnavi's heritage and home. Now, this changes later, but we'll get there. Now, it's worth noting that the murals of the Latina icons were created for the film by street artist Omar Garcia, aka Evaristo Angurria, from the Dominican Republic. In addition to these murals, which we see in the mantra montage, we see Nina walk past a series of murals on location as well, letting us know that these types of murals exist within the neighborhood. So then the question might be, who paints these murals? Who makes this cultural artwork that is entrusted with enshrining the memory and history of this community? And the answer we get is a character named Graffiti Pete. Now, true to his name, Graffiti Pete is often seen painting. In fact, he's one of the first characters in the core story that Usnavi encounters when he stops Pete from quote-unquote decorating Usnavi's grate. So yes, Graffiti Pete creates street art that sometimes is unwanted, but is he really the person behind these murals? We get a clue when Vanessa walks past Graffiti Pete painting what looks like a mural of a woman. We don't know if this will become another in the series of Latina icons or perhaps something else, but it seems plausible that he could be our mural maker. Now, the film never confirms this, but the Broadway stage version of In the Heights does. In the stage show, Sonny commissions Graffiti Pete to paint this mural of Abuela Claudia on the bodega's grate, changing the entire ending of the stage version of In the Heights. Now, perhaps we should take a step back and ask, well, who is Graffiti Pete? In the stage show, he's somewhat different. On stage, he's the first character we ever see, and he's carrying a boombox and spray cans. And since the first music we hear in the show is actually a radio channel surfing montage, in a way, Graffiti Pete with his boombox is actually our first narrative driving force. Until, of course, Usnavi chases him away and takes the reins of the narrative, and doesn't welcome Graffiti Pete back. Later in this scene, when Graffiti Pete tries to re-enter the narrative productively,
"What up? Buy my t-shirt."
Usnavi responds with open hostility.
Get the hell out of here.
Now, in a story about Washington Heights businesses, Graffiti Pete is also a businessman of sorts, a freelance street artist whose unconventional trade Usnavi initially rejects. But to be clear, Usnavi isn't somehow prejudiced against street artists, he's really just looking out for Sonny, whose best friend is Graffiti Pete.
Great sunlight this morning.
Yo, cuz, we fixed the grate.
What did I tell you about this punk?
In fact, when Sonny has solo rap moments in the show, Graffiti Pete is often there as his hype man. So seeing this friendship, Usnavi is worried that Sonny will fall in with the wrong crowd.
Contraband and vandalism? Man, you got 3 seconds before I'll call the police.
Now, In the Heights writers Lynn and Kiara are not hating on street art or street artists, but they are commenting on certain stereotypes about the barrio in order to challenge a Broadway audience that doesn't typically go north of 96th Street.
I've never been north of 96th Street.
In my previous video, I explained that above 96th Street is sometimes stereotyped as a bad neighborhood, a notion that Lynn and Kiara want to push against.
I went online just to analyze the rate of crime up in Washington Heights. Yo, the crime rate's twice as high on the Upper East Side.
No.
Yeah, this shit was astounding to me. I ain't never seen no banging or slanging in Woody Allen movies. Do me a favor, set the beef to the side. Is it alright for me to rep my people with pride? For kids to see Latinos in a positive light?
In the finale, when Usnavi sees the Abuela Claudia mural, inspiring him not to leave but to stay in Washington Heights, he has a profound change that allows him to finally see the value that Graffiti Pete brings to the community.
Graffiti Pete, you're gonna need new cans. Here's some money, finish up, there's been a slight change of plans.
Which in turn allows the audience to re-examine their own opinions on Graffiti Pete. The film of In the Heights, however, has a much broader audience than even, well, Broadway, so the Graffiti Pete arc was largely cut, and in the film, the bad influence that Usnavi wants to save Sonny from turns into known for his light feet dancing. Now, if you don't know what light feet is, it's a new style of hip-hop dance that features amazingly acrobatic moves, which Noah does in the film as well. And it's known for taking place in subways, often with the announcement of showtime.
Showtime, ladies and gentlemen, showtime. What time is it? Showtime. What time is it? Showtime.
Which Lynn references in Hamilton.
What time is it? Showtime!
And since dancing in the subway is banned and has led to fines and even arrests, having a light feet dancer play Graffiti Pete is a really interesting parallel. But with light feet gaining some attention, it is definitely a force to be reckoned with. Speaking of forces to be reckoned with, in the film, Graffiti Pete is a benevolent force from the beginning, and when I say the beginning, I mean literally as the film begins, when the Warner Brothers logo turns into a mural. It's signaling to the audience that we're in Graffiti Pete's world now, and rather than being a person Usnavi dislikes, Graffiti Pete is a goofy neighborhood kid who Usnavi mentors. In fact, one of the biggest indications of Graffiti Pete's change from the stage to the screen was a change in his line that originally was, "I got more hoes in the phone book in Tokyo." Now, this line always stood out to me, partly because it's an Asian joke, but also more specifically, my name is Howard Ho. I am a ho.
I wanna be a hoe.
Yes, I've heard all the jokes about my name my whole life, but yet I understood what Lin was doing, because Lin was trying to paint Graffiti Pete in a negative light. Lin writes, Ho isn't a popular Japanese last name at all. Pete can't even racism right. Anyway, I wanted a really wrong punchline here so Usnavi would react quickly and efficiently to shut him up. It doesn't age well. Lin, I totally agree with you.
Amen.
In the film, however, we, the audience, don't need to see Graffiti Pete in a negative light because his arc has been removed, so the line has been changed to,
I got more flows than Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Which takes out the previous line but also has the bonus of showing us Graffiti Pete's Jedi-like powers of air graffiti. Which sure, everyone in this scene has, but only because Graffiti Pete first sets it off by mentioning spray cans.
96,000. That's a lot of spray cans.
An even bigger change to Graffiti Pete's character between the stage and the screen is that he does not paint Abuela Claudia's mural on the grate in the finale, although he still pays tribute to her motto. And while Graffiti Pete does paint a mural, it is Vanessa and not Sunny who inspires it. In fact, the film uses Vanessa's role as a fashion designer and freelance artist to make a big statement about the artist having the power to frame stories. In the climax of Vanessa's song, It Won't Be Long Now, we see sheets of fabric flowing and rolling over the tops of buildings, only to transition out of her eye to reveal she's still in the salon. This visual is later alluded to when Usnavi says,
I just want to see the whole world through her eyes.
In other words, the artist's eye is literally the frame through which a character's deep emotional truths can be revealed. And so it's also fitting that Vanessa inspires Graffiti Pete to paint the mural of Usnavi's beach, which in turn will frame Usnavi's story. Remember how I said in the intro that there is a frame around the entire film? Well, this frame is this mural. Now, this is a little trippy, so stay with me, but it's strongly implied that the events of the film which Usnavi is narrating take place within the world of this mural, almost like it's a picture come to life. The smoking gun for this theory comes when Sunny says,
I did the crab in the corner.
Which we earlier saw come to life in a seemingly random shot. Yes, this green crab was really just Sunny's creation come to life the whole time. And the events of the film that Usnavi is narrating are often mirrored in the beach scenes that immediately follow. For example, the hipster couple that Usnavi encounters is soon followed by this shot of the beach, coincidentally with a couple as well. When the salon patron complains about her hair looking like a cockatoo,
you got me walking around here looking like a cockatoo.
We hear a squawk, and we cut to a shot of Usnavi with parrot-branded cans behind him. But of course, eventually, the story does catch up with the painting of the mural, and so the story and present day finally merge together. And we see this merging actually dramatized with all the characters on the beach as well. Since the story takes place in the mural, and the mural is the beach, it makes sense that we see them all there.
And you, and you, and you, and you were there.
And after the bodega mural is revealed, we hear echoes of the story on close-ups of all the objects throughout the store, reminding us of key story points. It's like that scene from The Usual Suspects that gets parodied a lot, except not creepy.
The guy's name is Cat Branchman.
So what's a guy like you and a guy named Cat?
So in a way, the film is expanding on the mural idea, and now it's the entire store itself that is really a mnemonic device, remembering all the stories that took place in a few days in the life of this block. In other words, The store is the story. Oh yeah, and there's one more parallel between the beach mural reality and present-day reality.
Can we go in the water now? Can we go to the water now?
Finally, when the kids do go to the water, we realize that in the mural reality, this water would have been the ocean. But in the present-day reality, we see it refers to the water coming out of the hydrants just outside the bodega. And here, the merging of the ocean and the city, of Usnavi's dream, his sueñito, and his home is complete. But we're not quite done. See, the meaning of In the Heights doesn't end with Usnavi and his decision to stay in Washington Heights. The theme of the mural isn't just about visibility, but a particular kind of visibility. The visibility of young people to be empowered to go above and beyond the previous generation. This theme is articulated in a scene between Kevin Rosario and his daughter Nina.
This is the moment where you do better than me. Not because of some fancy degree. It's because you can see a future that I can't.
Now, I'm going to talk more about this moment and Kevin Rosario in another video, so please subscribe. But for now, we see echoes of Kevin's statement in Sunny as well.
Yo, in 96,000, I finally fixed housing. Give the body your computers and wireless web browsing.
About this rap, Lin writes, Sunny, the youngest character, is the only one who immediately thinks about others in his fantasy. Not just a better life for himself, but a better world. The youngest among us will save us. Similarly, Nina wants to go back to Stanford to get the education necessary to help out the Dreamers, whose protections under the Dream Act are being threatened. And as she's realizing this, we hear the protest chant. Which brings us back to Pete, who Usnavi takes under his wing by giving him advice, and after the reveal of the bodega mural, money as well.
Graffiti Pete, you're gonna need some new cans. Here's some money. Finish up, there's been a slight change of plans. Right.
My film theory is that Graffiti Pete took that money and used it to paint the murals of Latina icons, which is not confirmed in the film, but in the stage show, Graffiti Pete calls the Abuela Claudia mural the first work in my new series. Because it's worth noting that even though Usnavi is a streetlight illuminating everyone's stories, Pete was also there doing the same work of illuminating the community stories through his murals that keep the legacy of the block visible. Expanding on the metaphor of Usnavi as the streetlight, both in the film and the stage show, when the blackout occurs, Graffiti Pete springs into action to literally light up the night with fireworks. Because Graffiti Pete's artwork is like a firework, which can fill even the murkiest night sky with light to illuminate the community and pave the way for the next generation. Speaking of the next generation, Sunny may have been the youngest character in the stage show, but in the film, it's these kids, including Usnavi's own daughter, Iris, whose name refers to a flower, but also the part of the eye that gives it its color. This ties back to the visual of Vanessa's eye being the window to her soul. Remember how I talked about the mnemonic of all the pictures of Usnavi's father that he looks at each morning and says his mantra to? Well, along with those pictures is another symbol of his father's legacy, the gray cap with the stripe. The hat is so identifiably representative of his father's legacy that Abuela Claudia even remarks on this when she sees Usnavi wearing it at the Rosario family dinner.
Pero you wore your papi's hat?
Yeah, it fits.
Guapo!
And actually, the pictures of Usnavi's father aren't random, but depict the moment when Usnavi's father passed the hat to the next generation, in this case, Usnavi as a kid. Now, figuratively, Usnavi has indeed worn many hats in this film. He's worn the hat of protagonist, tour guide, children's storyteller, percussionist, the torchbearer of his family's store, a barista. But most importantly, he's been the narrator, sometimes even directly addressing us while looking into the camera.
Hey, y'all, good morning.
A privilege no other character in the film has, which is why it's so important that the film ends with the hat not on Usnavi, but on his daughter. We are seeing in real time that moment when Usnavi takes the hat that was passed down to him, and along with it, all of the stories and culture of where it came from, and he in turn passes it down to the next generation. And it's at this moment, Iris, the daughter who has been bearing witness to her family and her neighborhood's history, having received the hat passed down from generation to generation, looks into the camera, confident in knowing full well that her story comes next. And one more thing. Even though Abuela Claudia didn't get her mural in the film, another beloved neighborhood lady did, the late great Doreen Montalvo. Which means that if the Warner Brothers logo mural was the beginning of Graffiti Pete's frame around this movie, then this mural, which is the final image before we go into the rolling credits, is the bookend, the final work in his series of Latina icons. Nice work, Graffiti Pete. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thank you to my newest patrons, Lynn Feldman, Catherine Zivkovich, Lexi Ingram, and Lowell Meyer. I've got many more videos planned on In the Heights and other musicals coming out, so please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.